Judge Simmons. Thank you for coming in on our podcast. This is actually very fun. I'm very excited that we were able to do this. My name is Natalie.
Hey, I'm Jordan. Yeah, super excited to be able to talk to you.
This is a great honor to come to Gainesville High School. This is a good school, so this is one I really wanted to come to. So,
Wow.
so thanks for having me on.
Well,
I appreciate it.
We're very honored. So we're just gonna jump right in and just ask you just a couple questions. We want this to be as open-ended as just like a conversation. So, what school did you attend for your undergrad?
Undergrad, I went to the University of Virginia.
Wow. Okay.
I'm a wahoo.
Was there like a specific thing that drew you to the UVA, or was it like?
Well, it had a very good reputation, and it was a difficult school, and it's very historic. And I really love history, and I really love Virginia history. So that was one of the reasons I went, and everybody thought it was really cool to go to UVA anyway.
Yeah.
So I had the opportunity, so I grabbed it.
Yeah, the reputation still stands.
Yeah. What about where did you go for your law school?
For law school, I went to another historic place, William and Mary in Williamsburg. So that was also very good, very historic. And again, I was still in the historical part of Virginia.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. Both really good schools. And what made you want to pursue your career in law?
Well, I've always been interested in history, government, how things work, the process, things of that sort. Yeah. And then, they said lawyers made a lot of money, and that's not necessarily true. But it was something that, was very interesting. And the law, going to law school, you don't necessarily have to practice law after you do it, but it gives you a really good background because in law school they teach you a different way to think. They teach you a different way to analyze problems and issues. And so I went there not necessarily thinking I would be a lawyer. In fact, I had been between college and law school, I was a newscaster, a news broadcaster. And I covered the Virginia legislature. I covered all kinds of regular news, police news, just anything that happened. I was there, the guy with the microphone. And so I thought a law degree would help me move up in the broadcasting world. But after a while, the law kind of took over, and it was much more interesting than trying to get in the broadcasting world.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really inspiring. I agree. Like, I feel like a lot of people who me and Jordan have talked to have definitely said pursuing a career in law, it really changes how you think.
Yeah, like when you were at law school, what was one of your favorite things there? Because, you hear a lot about how difficult it is and how hard it's going to be, but you don't really hear a lot about what people loved about law school.
Some of the classes were really interesting to me. Constitutional law was very interesting. There were some that were hopelessly dull, but you had to plod through it because that's what you do, contracts and things of that sort. But what happens in law school, people can go two different ways. They can just study the books and become real good at the law, or you can get to know your coworkers, your co-students, and find out how law is really a people thing. So, a trial lawyer is different than what they call a transactions lawyer. A transactions lawyer might be putting together a big, huge contract for a business, maybe a merger or something along those lines. Those big, thick contracts are written by lawyers, but they're in an office, 8-10 hours a day writing stuff. Since I was a trial lawyer, I would be in front of people, and I'm not trying to explain a contract. I'm trying to just, teach you about my case if that's the way it's going. And so in law school, it was actually a lot more social than I ever thought it was. Not social like going out and like just hanging out with your friends, but it was social in the sense of the lawyers kind of debating and arguing friendly way about a case. What does this case stand for? What does it really mean? Well, I think it means one thing, and someone says, no, it means another thing. And you'd have a good debate, and you realize, this is the push and shove of what the law is all about and how to interpret the law.
Yeah. What would you say, what would be a piece of advice for anyone about to go into law school and who may be a little scared or held back by all the the classwork and learning about case law, constitutional law, those kind of things?
That you will get through it if you concentrate, and it's difficult, but you'll get through it. And once you get through those 3 years or 4 years, depending on how long it takes you, you'll do fine. And then you do realize I do look at situations, legal situations, just anything differently. I analyze them differently. In fact, you find out in law school, one of the things they teach you is to be able to argue either side of any case. So, for example, if you're prosecuting a murder case and you're defending a murder case, and all of a sudden, as a law professor, I say, okay, you switch. You do hers, you do hers. And all of a sudden, you're like, wait a minute, I've been preparing for 3 weeks on my own. I couldn't possibly do the other side. Well, that's what they're teaching you. You're a lawyer. You're not somebody else. You analyze the case. You're not saying, oh, I love my client, or I the only way we can do justice is by me. That's not the way it works. So it teaches you that skill, and all of a sudden you go, wait a minute, there's a lot more aspects to any problem out there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I know you were speaking earlier about how you were a trial attorney and like how you were in the
Yes.
courtroom. Is that what you did before you became a judge, just trial, or did you like go anywhere else before that?
Well, I was briefly I worked for the Department of Labor, the federal government Department of Labor, and I wrote memos for administrative judges. And so that was not the most exciting job in the world. It was memos about health issues and things like that. And, you had to be a lawyer to do it, so okay. But then an opening came in the Fairfax County Commonwealth Attorney's Office, which is the prosecution. So doing trials is the main part, but also there's a lot of it where you're simply talking with witnesses, talking with police, planning cases with the police, because the police will bring in certain cases and they'll say, what do we do? And the prosecutor will say, well, here's the evidence that I need. You need to go talk to this witness, and this witness. I need you to bring the physical. I need you to bring me the fingerprints, the fingerprint expert. And so the coordination between an assistant Commonwealth attorney and a police detective was really vital. That was probably 50% of the job. The rest of it was going to court. I mean, some of the courts were relatively low level, like traffic court and the like, but it went right up to jury trials and murder cases and everything like that. And it was all like within a week. This 1 week, Monday you talk to the detective all day, Tuesday you're in traffic court, Tuesday afternoon you're doing preliminary hearings, Wednesday you have a jury trial for an embezzlement case. It might be complicated, it might not be. But the one might be a jury trial, one might be a bench trial, which means it's only in front of a judge, and it was very crowded and very busy all the time. So, but being a trial lawyer is much different than being a transactional lawyer.
Yeah. With all that chaos you just described, how did you really figure out that kind of balance between your job and your everyday life? Like, did you find it difficult?
Not really, because some people like me are extroverts and kind of thrive on chaos. So if you're say for example in the afternoons in preliminary hearings, those are felony cases and you're trying to sift through it and see how strong they are. So I might have 6 or 7 preliminary hearings and 6 or 7 detectives standing at my elbow, and we have 1 hour to figure out what we have. And so I could then tell the highlights. I would rely on police detectives like Detective Bergman at the time, who knew exactly what he was doing. He'd have a package ready to go. Here's what we got. Okay, Jeff, what's this case worth? Okay, let's see what we can do with that. Okay, let me talk to the defense lawyer. I would talk to the defense lawyer and say, here's what we're going to offer you. We're going to offer you 3 counts of burglary, 2 counts of grand larceny. We'll drop 4 counts. Talk to your client about that, and they would tell me the press of that. But once they go off and talk to their client, I'd take to the next detective and then talk to that detective, him or her, talk to the defense lawyer, him or her, same sort of thing. Here's what we're going to do. We'll offer you a misdemeanor and 10 days in jail. Talk to your client, see if she'll take that next day. But once you get used to that, once you get to know it, you know how to analyze a case. You can rely on your police detectives as to giving you really good information. If you don't have that, it would be a very difficult job.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, like you have to find your routine like any other job. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very good way of saying it, yeah.
What would you say is your favorite part about the job and your least favorite part about the job?
As a judge or a prosecutor?
Honestly, you choose which
Yeah.
one.
Well, first,
In all your experience.
okay. Well, as a prosecutor, I really liked jury trials. Um, a lot of people, and well, they should get very nervous in front of juries. I was more nervous in front of judges because judges knew the law. They knew all the intricacies of the law. They knew what I was doing, what I was trying to get out of a witness and the like. A jury doesn't know anything. They're just come in. They're not supposed to know anything. So they just come in and they're here to hear the case. So instead of being overly legalistic, I would try to explain it more in human terms.
Yeah, like simplify it.
And that's where I think my experience in radio helped, because in radio you write for the ear. You don't write for the books. And most lawyers, especially who have been transactional lawyers, write very careful, legalistic,
Yeah,
contractual
it's very
type,
meticulous.
and they talk like that.
Yeah.
And I talk like I'm just talking to the members of the jury, because I write for the ear. So if we're talking about an identification of somebody who I'm alleging committed a robbery at a 7-Eleven and the witness has identified him, but maybe, not very articulately when the witness just says, that's him, and the defense lawyer may want to be a lot more specific and legalistic. When you say that's him, what do you mean by him? Do you mean, so all of a sudden, I'm like, look, this is a common sense thing. This person was working at 7-Eleven. Somebody came in with a gun, stuck it in his face, and that's a face that you're going to remember for the rest of your life, as opposed to looking at somebody. If you're riding the metro, you look over, you look back, you look over, you look back, and you may never remember that person again. And so things like that is what I really liked about talking to juries, as opposed to, being very legalistic and that like.
Yeah.
So
Because you can convey that to the
yes,
jury. Yeah.
yes. So now as a judge, it's different. Now as a judge, I have lawyers in front of me giving me specific legal arguments, and that's fine. That's what most judges do. But I especially like it when people come in without lawyers and they're just, again, being themselves. And in small claims court where we don't have lawyers, or in protective orders where people are fearful of somebody who's making their life very, very difficult. They just talk to me, and I really like that, as opposed to the lawyers trying to put it in legalistic language and judge under 19.2-303. What happened? Just tell me what happened in your best
It's much
words.
more human.
Yes, and I enjoy that a whole lot more than a lawyer kind of cleaning up the case. A lawyer's supposed to clean up the case. That's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to look at what they need to prove. But coming from just a person without a lawyer is more enjoyable for me personally.
Yeah, it's always hard preparing for our mock trials because you want to sound as professional as you can. Because also we're young, so we want to convey that to people who are watching. But I feel like the biggest thing I've learned is sharpening my communication with that. So yeah, like I really like that you said, "Oh, I write for the ear." That's a really good point. I'm gonna remember that. And yeah,
It's kind of the same thing too for me, because I'm a theater kid.
Okay.
So I love the dramatics. I love the, having fun when you're doing it thing. So I think that's something that I tried to take into it, like being more human in how you communicate versus this is the exact law. Like this is it. This is why, and having more of a story there.
Let me ask you, as a theater kid, because I've seen some high school theater where you're stuck with the playwright's version with like 1940s language or that it's like, if you could break out of that, your show would be a lot better. Now, I'm not sure if you're allowed to. Are you allowed to change the dialogue?
So it kind of
Script?
depends. If it's something like Shakespeare or something
Right.
that you have that doesn't have copyright issues, you are allowed to change it to like what works better for you and change it to fit more modern times. But generally, it's like a really, like if it's just like something that someone wrote, it's really weirdly written, or it has words you don't want to say, things along those lines, you have to message the copyright, like the person who wrote it, and get permission to change anything in it. And if they say no, you just have to go with it.
I feel like I'm not a theater kid, but I feel like a lot of what's blown up now is like creators kind of modernizing like classical plays. I feel like I've seen that a lot, especially like here at school and like other schools. Yeah.
What comes to mind is Guys and Dolls. If you've ever, I don't know if this school's ever done that play. My daughter was a technical person at Guys and Dolls, and I'm thinking these 1950s language is a lot different, especially because it's jargon. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking, this show would be so much better if they talked like now. But obviously they can't do that. But being theater is great for if you ever want to be a lawyer, because you are connecting to people, a lot of them, and that's really good. So if you can keep that up, keep those
Yeah.
together, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stemming off of like more modern times or going in the more progressive direction. Do you personally think that the legal system is evolving in the right direction, or do you wish to see any changes in the near future?
I'm not the change person. The judge is supposed to be the one that really always defers to the precedent. And that's what we are based on. And that's why it's very difficult for people who don't really understand the separation of powers, the executive branch, either governor or president, the congressional or the legislative branch, either Congress or the House of Delegates in Virginia, and the judicial branch. The judicial branch is supposed to follow precedent. We don't make law. We're not supposed to make law. And so there's a lot of judges that want to make law, but the Congress is the one that changes it, or the House of Delegates, and the president fights over things, maybe a veto, or maybe, whatever they do in executive orders. But a judge is not supposed to go out and, you know something? The elected people, the Congress was wrong on that bill. They shouldn't have never done that. They shouldn't have spent that money, or they shouldn't have created that program. And the president or the governor is certainly wrong, and who am I? They didn't appoint me. They didn't appoint me to have Mark Simmons' opinion on what the law is about. What I'm supposed to do is read the law when they argue it to me and say, what does it mean? Well, it means what it says. It may say the police shall not do something. Well, shall not do something, and they're arguing, but judge, it was important. He had to do this. It was really important. Well, it says right here, they shall not. Go back to the legislature and ask them to change it. And it's very frustrating for people who come to court who think judges are more like kings and queens, where they kind of make the decision in court. Like, for example, one of the hardest things I do is I have landlord-tenant court. And when somebody can't pay the rent, it's usually not because they want to play games with the landlord. It's usually because they've lost their job, or they have other difficulties, they've got sick. And the landlord comes and sues them. Well, it would be really easy to say, Judge, come on, I lost my job. I have no power or authority to do that. So it's very, very difficult for me. I can think of alternatives. I can think of trying to maybe delay something for a week or two and have somebody help pay the rent, find a source of income somewhere. But I don't have the power or the authority to say, well, Mr. Landlord, you don't get your apartment back because this guy lost his job. So the system works. If you let the system play out, the legislature sometimes changes the rules, sometimes in a private matter like a landlord-tenant. Sometimes the landlord realizes it's better to have this tenant in there and will give them a break. They'll give them a discount. They'll give them something. But I have no authority to step in. So there's a great misunderstanding about what judges have the power to do.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, you're good.
like speaking on that, like I know you're talking about how it's kind of like a hard thing because you want to help these people, but you can't necessarily because of limitations in the system. But are there any other ethical dilemmas you see as a judge?
Ethical in the sense where people are not telling me the truth or something like that?
Or like ethical in the sense that like it's something that you don't personally agree with, but you have to.
Oh, I do that every day. Every day. I mean, sometimes, new prosecutors want to drop charges. I have no authority to tell them not to. I'm like, well, the witness is here. The guy's holding a videotape. This crime actually occurred. Mr. Commonwealth Attorney, why are you dropping this charge? I want to get lunch. It could be something as simple as that, but I have no power to step over that and say, you must do this. I mean, I see civil cases where it seems to be a strong civil case and one side doesn't want to proceed.
Yeah.
That's up to them. I mean, that's, again, the judge is not proactive, and the other thing is that the judge doesn't pick their own cases. So if I have a difficult case, I can't say, well, I sure wish I didn't have this case. I'm stuck with it, and I have to make the decision the best I can with the evidence I give. Now, sometimes that means Maybe a case really needs 3 witnesses and only 2 are there. And it was the third witness that they could have won the case. But the third witness isn't there. I can't just say, that third witness probably would have said this, and therefore the plaintiff wins.
Yeah. You
But
can only do so much with what you're given.
that's right.
Yeah.
So that's why they call it your day in court.
Yeah.
If you're doing mock trials and you're feeling really bad that day, you got a temperature of 103, and you're just not on the uptick, and then 3 days later you went, when that judge asked me that question, I knew the answer. I knew the response, but I had a fever of 103. Well, that day in court, it came and it went.
Yeah.
And that's true in real life too.
I feel like the most important part, which is I feel like is the hardest part, like as an outsider looking in, is separating the emotion and your humanity with just evidence and fact. Because I feel like now especially it's very hard to separate that with social media and stuff like that, because you're given so much information, and like me and Jordan being so young, it's kind of hard sometimes to separate like just what's going on,
And that's the difference with court. We sort of vet the information, and it's called the rules of evidence. So there's certain things, anything goes on in social media. True, not true, it doesn't matter. But once you get to court and say you repeat, some witness repeats what they're going to say on social media, and the other side objects, and I can't hear that. Under our old rules that we follow, no, that's not reliable. That evidence isn't reliable.
Yeah.
Oh, and so there's things that we do that we vet those things, and the rules are already set. We know how to vet them, and it gives us what we think is a more truthful trial.
Yeah.
And that's why we always say, like, anytime there's some famous crime that goes on, usually some murder, everybody knows right away who did it and how long this guy should get and all the prison time and all that. And then all of a sudden, the evidence actually goes on, and there's cross-examination, and you ask the witness, like, what did you see? I saw the man shoot the guy. I said, oh, how far were you standing? Well, 100 feet. Oh, that's do you wear glasses? Yeah. Did you have your glasses on that day? No. It's like, there's things happen that are not, that we can vet it by cross-examination, by things that you don't jump to a conclusion, like social media.
Yeah, we kind of see that a lot on social media too, like the court of public opinion, like what you were saying, that like people see a few things or they get a few pieces of information about it, and then suddenly they know the entire case, they know everything about it, and this person's guilty. And then as the real truth starts to come out, like I feel like we kind of see that a lot in like the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp case, like how
people just don't know the full context,
and like either way it went against both of them. Johnny Depp was really guilty, then Amber Heard was really guilty, and no one could make their mind up.
Yeah, and the thing is, we always want to make sure we're siding with what's socially right, like who is right in the situation, when I feel like we should focus more on, well, what actually happened, like not about the person, separate the person, like what is actually happening, and then make your decision. Because we shouldn't just, it's kind of like when you're in class and the teacher's asking a question, you don't want to be the only one, so you kind of just wait around to see, like, oh, who else is going to raise their hand. I feel like it's that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I feel like definitely see that a lot.
That's a good example of a trial that was tried in Fairfax County, and the judge, she was excellent. Judge Penny Ascarati, she's the chief judge, and she told the lawyers how this case was going to, how much time she was going to give them to the exact minute. She goes, you need 6 weeks? I'm going to give you 6 weeks. You get 3 weeks? You get 3 weeks. Put your best case on. She didn't put up with any shenanigans, because those are the kind of cases where the lawyers like to do shenanigans.
Profile,
in front of the jury. She doesn't put up with shenanigans, and she ran a tight ship, got the exact information both sides wanted, and the jury came up with their verdict. Couldn't have picked a better judge. She instructed the jury, and I tell you what, I was proud to be a part of the judiciary because of her.
Yeah.
Just did a really good job, and now Johnny and Amber have gone their own separate ways.
Good.
I mean, kind of talking about memorable cases or like, big cases. Was there one case that kind of shaped your viewpoint on justice? Or how you approach it?
Or is there like any case that has really, like, you haven't forgot about it, like it really sticks with you to this day?
When I was a prosecutor, there was a series of what we called the Vietnamese home invasion robberies, where a number of Vietnamese gangsters were preying on Vietnamese immigrants here in the United States, and were breaking into their houses while they were there and putting guns to their heads, threatening their children, shooting around the house because they knew there was a lot of cash in the house. At the time, the immigrants didn't trust the banks, so they kept the cash in the house. Many of them ran businesses, jewelry stores, things of that sort. And they also knew that many of the immigrants wouldn't call the police. They didn't trust them because of whatever in their own home country. So these gangs were going all over the country. If they had they had a gang in Chicago, they had a gang in California, a gang here in Northern Virginia, and they were breaking into these houses. And at some point, somebody got one of the gangsters to turn and was willing to, because we finally got an identification on one of the gangsters. And so once we got him to turn, he was arrested, and we made him an offer of 2 life terms if he testified. But if he didn't testify, we were going to make it much worse than 2 life terms.
Yeah.
So, but he was willing, and we went after these gangsters. And the way they would do it is if they were based in Chicago, the Chicago gangsters would go to Northern Virginia, where they were unknown to the victims. And then when they went back to Chicago, it was the Northern Virginia gangsters that would go into the houses, and nobody knew their faces. But they made a few mistakes. I had some really good detectives. We worked with other detectives across the country, and we brought down this gang, and it was a very fierce gang. We got life sentences all over the place. So that's what helped me. And a lot of these immigrant families came to us, to the police, to me as a prosecutor, and thanked us because they were so afraid that these guys were preying on their own ethnicity, which was really sad. You know, the successful people who had done well, and these guys knew where they lived, kicked in the doors, put guns to like 7-year-old children's heads. It was just awful stuff. And but that was the kind that brought me great satisfaction as to
life sentences all around, I'm sure. Yeah.
I hope they're still there, because they're not getting out on parole anytime soon.
Yeah. Hold on, I'm scrolling here. But I think coming back to the process of you becoming a judge, because you were a Commonwealth first, what was how did that happen?
Well, I was luckier than most.
I know becoming a judge is like very difficult.
It's different in Virginia than it is for a federal judge. A federal judge is appointed by the president and then approved by the United States Senate. So that's a different world. They do all kinds of background checks, all kinds of political trading back and forth. In Virginia, local lawyers, and you have to be a lawyer to be a judge, local lawyers put in their name in their community, and the local bar association interviews the lawyers, and they say, tell us what kind of judge you're going to be, what do you think of that? And then the bar association ranks them. And then what happens is they take that ranking, and then the people that actually choose is the Virginia legislature. It's not the governor, it's the Virginia legislature that chooses the judge. And so I put in one time, a judge lost her job. She had been too harsh with people, was the word. You got to be nice to people when you're,
personable.
Traffic. Yeah, and, respectful and stuff. And I always liked her as a good judge. She was a good judge to me, but I guess I wasn't in the courtroom all the time. So so we had interviews, and then we had interviews with the Virginia legislature itself, and then the legislature chose. And now I was very lucky because I got chosen on the first round. Most people, it takes a few times to go through, but
Definitely that UVA on your application.
my charm, really. But and part of that was understanding what the legislature did. And remember, I covered the legislature, so some of the people again were very technical and very transactional, and this is the kind of judge I'm going to be. And the one thing I knew was the end of a long day in Richmond. We went to Richmond. It was the end of a long day, and they had a very a very contentious argument that same day. It was some big issue in Virginia, had nothing to do with judges. And so at the end, they were interviewing judges for Fairfax, and I was the last person to be interviewed. So I tried to make it a little light, and, again, writing for the ear. It's like, look, you guys have been through a lot today.
Yeah.
I'll be short, and I was
Yeah.
rather short, and I told them what I think, because the district court is the people's court. The general district court is like the people's court, and I'm going to treat people like that. I was trying to be funny. One guy says, "Can you be funny on the bench?" And he's, "Well, if you let me, I'll." Sure. Sure, absolutely. So if you let me, and so at that point, that evening, they came and they said, "Okay, you get to be the judge," and I was thrilled.
Wow.
Wow, that's so cool.
That is awesome. That really is.
That really shows the power of like people skills.
Yeah.
You have to
And
have
just
them.
being yourself. Like, that's so important.
Yeah, because nobody really expects to get it.
Yeah.
Right off.
Yeah.
And the few that do expect it, sorry.
Yeah. It's always better to have personality. Yeah.
And as it turned out, of the 7 people that were being interviewed that day for that job, 6 of them became judges, and the 7th didn't really want it. He realized, I don't really want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So everything worked out well for everybody.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
Okay. So, what advice would you give to someone considering being a lawyer or being a judge?
If you want to be a lawyer, first, if you want to be a lawyer, understand what it's about, and that that this is something you really want to do. But go to law school anyway if you can, because it can really help you in a lot of things. Business executives, a law background is really valuable. You don't have to go through lawyers for a lot of things.
Yeah.
If you're interested in just advancing in life, a law degree will never hurt you. It's actually a doctorate. It's a Juris Doctorate. So, all the people who have PhDs, you sometimes address them as doctor. Now, lawyer is not addressed as a doctor, but it's the same educational background. So you're like, wow, that's a doctorate. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So that's something, but be ready to be dedicated to it, to get through those 3 years, because it's not easy, and it's just not easy. Now, if you ever wanted to become a judge, what you have to look at is be ready to be isolated. My life is a lot different than when I was a prosecutor than when I am as a judge, because certain people talk to me differently. They're very respectful. "Oh, hello, Your Honor." But they don't really talk to me and chat with me like they're my old friends, because they're afraid that they're saying something that they're not supposed to say, or that I'm hearing something that I'm not supposed to hear. And so it's a lot more isolating than people think. And there's a lot of things that just aren't fun, like you were talking about, what kind of cases do you get frustrated with? A lot of them. I see a lot of cases where I'm wondering why the lawyers are saying certain things, and it's like, you should be exploring another line of evidence, not this line, but that line. And when they don't try a case as well as the judge thinks they should, the judge gets frustrated, but we can't fill in. So if you're trying to become a judge, you have to understand that it can be isolating. You're not in charge of everything. You're not the boss of everything. It's a very interesting job, but you deal with what you have, what evidence you have that day. He forgot witness number 3. He loses. Wish you had brought witness number 3.
Yeah. There's always something, but you just have to do with what you're given. Well, we love Law Club.
That's good. And you guys are doing well, huh?
Yeah. Appellate court, April
8th.
Yeah.
Yeah, this case is hard. It's a hard one.
It is.
It's the same one we had before, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a very difficult case. That's a kind of case where a judge could go either way, a jury could go either way, and like you say, social media tells you the way you're supposed to go. But maybe sometimes you have to hear the evidence, and every case would be different also. If your witnesses are different, like I know you have, some of your classmates are witnesses, some are more, convincing than others.
Yeah.
We definitely saw a wide range of results in the
Yeah,
trial, and
we
we
did.
saw a wide range of witnesses. I think what our defense teams, my team got voluntary manslaughter.
Okay.
Our other defense team got not guilty.
Okay.
One of our prosecution teams first degree?
I think, Momin and Sean got first degree.
And then
Okay, wow.
the other team got not guilty.
Yeah,
Okay.
not guilty. Yeah.
So we saw like a huge range on there, and then in terms of witnesses, we got
Yeah, I loved being there that day, just seeing all the people that come out. It's really nice to have a program like that. And I know it's helped me not only just like confirming what I want to do in my future, but with school in general and communicating and opening up, because I used to, like for the first 2 years of high school, I was very, very closed off, very shy, and I feel like my public speaking is still, it still needs a lot of work, but I've definitely been improving on it, and it's been the best.
Yeah, I think it kind of gave me an opportunity to step out of my bubble a little
Yeah,
bit, because
agree.
I got very comfortable in what like I was used to doing, and so I think this like pushed me a little bit to try
Yeah.
to try something new and to try harder in things, because
Yeah.
you really have to know your stuff. You can't like just vaguely know it and then
Yeah.
argue it. Like you have to know the cases, especially for the appellate round. Like
Yeah.
those
This is our
judges,
packet.
they
It's
will
huge.
like they will like eat you up if you don't if you don't know your stuff.
That means both of you are ready, both for college and law school. I'm telling you, because if you know you need to prepare and then you do it, you're ready.
Yeah, it's a first step. Accountability.
You got it. I'm counting on you two.
Thank you.
And Jordan are
Thanks.
going to be in front of me like, I remember Natalie.
Oh,
I remember her. That'll be great.
Yeah.
I remember Jordan. This is going to be great.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I mean it. I mean it. I've had some cases where we've done classes, same criminal justice classes, and two people were so outstanding. They were head and shoulders above everybody else. We finished up, and I said, you two are going to be in the business. You two are going to make it. The rest said, hi, good night, everybody. The rest of them are all going, doing whatever. I said, you two are going to be in the business. You watch. So
That's great to hear. Yeah.
And I got confidence on
Yeah.
you two. Good.
Thank you.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers very much crossed.
Yeah, I heard a lot of horror stories from my dad because he works in government,
Okay.
works for State Department, and there's a lot of people that he knows who went through law school, like did the whole thing, and then just didn't become lawyers. And he always tells me, he's like, "Are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to do this? Because I don't want to pay for law school, and then you don't become a lawyer."
No, honestly, that's a big one with my parents too.
Absolutely. That is a big commitment because you can get ahead in some other field of life. But that's, well, but it never hurts.
Yeah.
If you have the luxury of having someone pay for law school, it never hurts.
That's true.
Yeah. I think one question we also had was, what was a legacy that you want to leave as a judge? Like, is there something you want to leave behind?
That's a good question.
Yeah, like leave your mark. Make your mark.
That's a good question. Just that I was a fair and decent person, and I treated everybody well, and I listened to the evidence and the cases, listened to the people that were in front of me, and made the best decisions I can. I'm not one who wants to say, I wanted to change the world. I wanted to make every unjust situation. Look, it doesn't happen because sometimes the right witnesses don't show up for court. So what am I going to do? But just that I was fair and decent, that I listened to everybody completely. I didn't make decisions beforehand and just presume something about Jordan or Natalie. It just, listen to you and go, okay. And treated them nicely, treated them fairly.
Yeah, that's a really good legacy.
Yeah, I think that's a good one, especially because you kind of get the impression judges are mean or like they're gonna
Yeah, judges are scary.
Yeah,
Some of them are scary.
especially like the appellate round. There were definitely a few that like scared me. They scared me. So like,
And that says a lot. She's good.
no, don't say that. We're knocking on wood. But yeah, so I think like knowing that there are judges out there who want to be like fair and good and really listen to people and make it somewhere where they're not necessarily scared to be in the
Right.
courtroom is a good thing.
We're trying to get at the truth. Some are a little nastier than others in doing that. There's some who are a little bit more impatient is probably the right way of saying it. But I try to take my time and listen to you and then say, oh, sorry, Jordan. Natalie wins on this one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for talking to us. This has actually been a really fun conversation.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed
Yeah.
having this conversation with
Yeah.
you.
It was great getting to know more about you and your story.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is great. Thank you. Go Gainesville.
Go Gainesville.
Go Gainesville.